Welcome back, everybody, to the Weird is Strong podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Grunsteiner. Today, we've got Tyler Floch on the podcast, Team Flow. Well, I met him back in December at my men's retreat, and we connected immediately. And this is such a fun episode, and I can't wait for you to hear it. So, let's get weird. Welcome, Tyler, to the Weird and Strong podcast, man.
Wow, it feels like I was just here, but it was, this has been fun back-to-back days. So feeling very strong, connected, and ready to drop in.
Hell yeah, man. I start everybody off with a weird question. So are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Weird question for you is, does a Pop-Tart count as a ravioli?
Does a Pop-Tart count as a ravioli?
Or would you consider a Pop-Tart a ravioli?
Would I consider a Pop-Tart a ravioli? Okay.
It's that moment.
I know.
On everybody's face that I always love.
Yeah, this reminds me of the old, is hot dog, is that a sandwich?
Yeah.
Or what's the hot dog one? Is it a sandwich or is it a...
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, is a hot dog a sandwich? That's it, right? Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's not a sandwich. and the case can be made like a Pop-Tart. You could make the case for a Pop-Tart being a ravioli. However, I've never eaten a sweet ravioli. I haven't. I don't think I have. So I've never eaten a ravioli for dessert. I don't think. But that's not to say I'm not open to it. And maybe I have by eating a Pop-Tart. Dude, I used to fucking crush Pop-Tarts as a kid.
Yeah.
S'mores Pop-Tarts with a fucking just tall glass of milk.
Yeah.
Not that, 2% milk back in the day. Oh, how little did I know?
Yeah. Was that like when you were like a teenager, or was that like adult life?
Oh, that was teenage days.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
None of us know any better back then.
Exactly. Yeah. Start your day off with just like, but to be honest, could be worse. I could not have had the milk. So at least I got something in.
Yeah. Since we're both in the coaching industry and people's health and wellness, have you ever heard of the Pop-Tart test?
No. What's the Pop-Tart test?
So the Pop-Tart test, people have been using this as a glucose, management test, or like to see like how does your body actually handle glucose. So like if you have like a continuous glucose monitor, like crush a Pop-Tart and just watch the numbers and see what happens, and like actually see that major fluctuation. How long does it take to normalize for you? So then you get like this really great idea of like how, like what are your insulin levels like when you have an influx in pure sugar like a Pop-Tart is. Yeah, like you know exactly how many grams of sugar it is, and carbohydrates, and like actually just see what happens with the body.
Yeah, the first time I got introduced to that was in the book Wired to Eat. Did you ever read that book? Is it Rob Wolf?
Haven't. I've heard of it, but I haven't read it myself.
Fascinating thing was like Rob Wolf. He's super sensitive to rice. So rice was kind of like those tweener things with paleo back in the day, where it's like some would have it, some would have it, not have it. And he would eat rice, and it would send his blood sugar skyrocketing. Versus his wife, she was like a Wolverine. She could eat whatever, and her blood sugar was chill. You know, it was like level, steady. And that really opened me up to just like how different we all are, and the dogmatic approach to diet nutrition. That book really just opened me up, and having tools and ways to measure what is for that specific person and what works for them. And it was really interesting, and made me go out and get like at that point there wasn't like any of these like continuous glucose monitors, so it was just like buying like the diabetic strip type of dealies.
Yeah, I remember that. Like I went deep into that once as well. Like I think I still have a blood glucose monitor and a ketone monitor somewhere around. Of like, let's see what's actually happening. Yeah, and like the times that like early on that I didn't actually really understand what was going on, and like post workout took a glucose a blood glucose test and was appalled at what was going on. Not realizing that there's a major spike in blood glucose after you exercise.
Right.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay, never mind.
Did you do the dextrose post workout? Were you one of those guys? And like,
No, I have had it before, but not in the way that you would think. Okay. So like, when I lived in Germany, like it was like you could get the dextrose like cubes. They're like came in like little containers or little like wrappers, and they flavored them with something. I don't know. It could have been. It could have actually been like crack cocaine. I don't know. Totally. It was delicious, and I would just be like on the bus eating some dextrose.
Oh God, no. I would just get these big orange tubs of dextrose, order them off of Amazon or whatever, and put that in with my protein shake after. And oh man, like that's what I lived on for, not lived on, but like so dogmatic about just like this idea of a post-workout window. And then this is just what I was taught, and I'm just gonna blindlessly take it on faith, taking my dextrose post-workout, taking my BCAAs, and then I stopped, like, I'm doing that for 5, 6, 7 years, having to do it, must do it right after I'm done training, get it in, right?
Like,
and then
in 5 minutes, I'm all my gains are gonna go away.
Exactly. And then I finally just like I don't know what kind of got me to slowly just drop that process of just like, I think it was just like running an experiment. Hey, if I don't do this, what will happen? And turns out I didn't do it, and I was fine.
Basically the same.
Yeah. And actually, like, my digestion got a lot better. So, but yeah, that was my, I don't know how we got down that rabbit hole of like post-workout, all that stuff. But, man, just like the wild things I would do just to be like, I'm matching up. I'm with performance and gaining an edge in some way. Right.
Absolutely. Since we're on this of like wacky things that you've done post workout nutrition and like that approach of things, what are the ways that, what are the unconventional ways that you show up in the world? What makes Tyler weird?
Unconventional ways that I show up in the world. Man. Let me sit with this for a second. First things that comes up is first just the capacity or the way that I can shift from like, okay, we're locked in, we're taking this set seriously, we're gonna dial in and let's fucking do this. And after that, like, we're joking, we're laughing, we're bullshitting about whatever.
Yeah.
I was just talking with my client today about the old Terry Tate Office Linebackers commercials. I don't know if you remember that one.
Now I do. I was like,
you're right. I didn't thought about it in like over like 15 years. And we started talking about it this morning. But yeah, I would say just kind of like the kind of fluctuation of being able to, yes, get serious, get intense, but also on the way other end of the spectrum, be like just as silly. So like kind of that combination of like super intense, locked in, and then super goofy, silly. And I would say probably 80% of the time more in the silly, goofy, but like 20% of the time I can really, when need to, like tap into that hyper focused. And that's what I love about exercise, working out, CrossFit. When I did it, it's just like being able to tap into kind of like that warrior, that anger, that intensity. Just like, man, it really allows me to like feel into that confidence. And then also being go
into that like deep dark pain cave, like you're doing the battle with yourself.
Right. Creating that authentic pride. Totally. I would say the other ways that I show up unconventionally, even just going to the goofy, silly. It's just, yes, I have, there's kind of two, I guess, purposes or ways that I love to serve. And the first is guiding others and kind of healing themselves, strengthening themselves, improving themselves, and also just like making people laugh.
Yeah.
It's like two just as important values of mine is one, like giving people the tools, guiding them in improving like their lives. That fills me up. And if I can get somebody to like gut belly laugh, like that fills me up just as much.
Yeah. I got 2 questions related to that.
Yeah.
So the ability to swing from serious intensity to the joking and the having fun, was that something that you was just inherently part of you, or is that something that you felt like you had to develop? And then the second question is, do you find that those 2 areas, the helping, the healing, and the laughter, are more often intertwined, or do you still keep those really separate?
I would say the first one is more inherent. Yeah, to me, it's just indicative of the environment that I grew up in, which was very intense, chaotic, traumatic, fighting, yelling, mixed in with just a lot of like laughter, a lot of so I feel like it was very like connected to the environment that I grew up in, and laughter and all that stuff was just a way to find ways to kind of break from that, to have peace from that, to be able to then like tolerate it and things like that. So I think that was very much connected to the environment that I grew up in. And then as it pertains to are those 2 separate, the laughing and the improving lives? It's all together, because when somebody can laugh, they can downregulate. They're way more open. A lot of trust happens. And we don't have to take ourselves so seriously. So it takes the pressure off. And so many more things open up when we aren't putting so much weight, so much pressure on ourselves to have the perfect outcome, to have this perfect thing, because to me, it really doesn't exist. It's not about perfection. It's about showing up consistently. It's about giving your best effort, whatever that may look like for you. So if I can interject and like give people the permission to not take things so seriously, it almost allows them to show up more fully in that. So, and also it helps them to stay more consistent, because if it's hard to like show up for your training sessions day in, day out, if you're like trying to keep up that super intense vibe. It's like it burns you out, it wears you out. But if you can come to my session knowing that I'm going to get a kick-ass workout and I'm going to enjoy myself through it, it's way less intimidating. So I think that's another big element of intentionality behind it, is to create an experience where it's way more enjoyable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
One of the things, so I'm curious about this with many people, because I've talked to a lot of people who have exited the CrossFit space for various reasons. And like for myself, like one of the big things was that that mentality of almost like every day we're going to war. And it's like, even when you had somebody leading a class or training partners that were very fun, there's still that notion of like every day we're soldiering on, we're fighting the battle. And it's like, sometimes I don't want to fight a battle. I just want to show up and do my work and like make it feel like it matters. Was that something similar for you, or did you have other reasons that distanced you from like doing CrossFit for yourself?
Yeah. As I trained, it was for myself. It was all seriousness. It was, and something similar to what we discussed yesterday was because it was attached to my identity and my worth.
Yeah.
So much was riding on my sessions, improving myself, getting better. So it was like, in order for me to do well on these lifts, in order for me to get peak performance, I had to approach it with that all out do or die mentality. Like every set fucking counts, every rep counts, every workout counts, get better, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. That, that mentality. Yes. And
I love that saying, just because of like the absurdity of it now. Because like I remember thinking that at one point. I was like, many times, like you just are. You're neither getting better or worse. You just are.
Totally.
Or if you zoom out far enough, you are getting better.
Yeah.
But if you zoom in too closely, you're getting worse.
Yeah. And then for me, as it went with coaching, and it was because, I was doing it competitively. Mm-hmm. So, but as I coached, in the beginning, as a young coach, I would push people that way. I would like all out, like try to like push them to their absolute limits. And for younger people, like people who were like in their 20s, like great. People in their 40s, 50s, not so great.
Like, see you later. I'm not coming to his class anymore.
But yeah, and then there would be certain people who would gravitate towards it and love it, and like people would be like, "That guy's a little too much."
Yeah,
So as I evolved as a coach, I began to get way better at feeling out what this person would need. Some people just want like a little bit of cues. They want you to kind of like bust chops and like have fun. Some people want you to push them a little bit more. Some people don't want any type of push. I remember one class where I was like, "Come on, let's pick it up," and the person was like, "Don't fucking say that to me." Like, wow. That's not helping. Yeah, like in the middle of the I was like, "Okay, lesson learned." Yep. And because if somebody's like in their heart think that they're pushing themselves, and then someone tells them like to pick it up, like do more, that would piss me off. Yeah, I get it.
Is it, that inner projection of whatever they just said means I'm less than.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Like I'm judging them like that. That they're not pushing hard enough in some way. So I got way more aware of how I was saying, what I was saying as I evolved as a coach. And that just came with time. And then I'm forgetting kind of like what the beginning question was. But as it went to like CrossFit and getting burnt out and things like that, for me, what ultimately led to like leaving CrossFit was just injury and just having that look in the mirror, like the juice wasn't worth the squeeze anymore. Why am I doing this? I aim to improve myself as much as I could and squeeze like every inch of performance out of myself. And like my body was just like saying like, no more, this is all we got. And to take a step back and, I didn't want to hear that for a while. I wanted to just keep pushing through it, keep driving. And to look at, what I could accomplish and what I was capable of, if I would just have an honest look at my numbers and all that, it's just like, there's no way I'm cut out to compete with the best of the best. Yeah. So it's time to stop treating my training how the best of the best would treat their training and start that slow shift. Okay, what does my training look like? What does it look like when I'm not training for performance or this all or nothing mindset and everything like that? And as I evolved more into that and started digging more into that, that's way more of my philosophy and how I coach today. Very much in alignment with how I train is how I train others.
Very nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
I always love coaches who do like the things that they walk the walk, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much.
Yeah. And that's been a process for myself of like, letting go of the competitive training and getting into the lifestyle training and the things that I do with my clients, which is very similar. Do you think that, like, not to make this all about CrossFit, do you think that there is a way to train CrossFit in a sustainable way, or to train to compete in a way that avoids that burnout, that disappointment, that injury? Like, are there ways that people can train competitively and not train like a psychopath?
I'd say yes, but it would depend on the individual, and they'd have to have a lot of self-awareness. They'd have to have a lifestyle where other things aren't so stressful. But I have seen it work in certain individuals. myself, it would be super challenging. But I've seen it work, so it would be hard to say like no. But I would just have to go off of the individual. What does their work life look like? How's their sleep? How are all these other pillars of health looking? And then you could kind of get an idea of like, would they be capable of doing that? I'm definitely not. CrossFit is incredible in a lot of ways, and it receives a lot of criticism, rightfully so. And what it did really powerfully was it created an environment for people to come for, and it's similar to church in a way, oddly enough, right? That people are coming together with a higher purpose, which is to improve themselves. And it's in community. And when you're pushing yourself and you're seeing others push themselves, this moment is created for each person to dig a little bit deeper, to push a little bit more, which at times, great. All the time, hard to say. So CrossFit, when it has to be super mindful in the programming, and the people doing it also have to be very self-aware. And if you have those two things, you could definitely train it and do it with longevity. But most of the time, a lot of the time, that's not the case. So that's kind of where I kind of land with it. And I'm super grateful for all my experiences. Like, my toolkit is so expanded from everything that I learned within CrossFit, right? So many different things, from strength training, kettlebell training, gymnastic training. The list goes on of everything I got to train myself and then also coach in others. So I have such an expanded toolkit when I get to work with clients today. When to use intensity, when not to use intensity, how much is too much, right? Like throttling that, like walking that line. And the thing is, that line is going to be different for every person, right? The risk reward, right? Why is this person training? So to push them so close to that line and risk injury for a lot of people, like I actually err like, let's not get so close to that line. And if we do, let's make sure that you had a good night's sleep. Let's make sure that we're not too stressed out, right? But like CrossFit, it's like kind of like the gift and the curse, where it's creating the conditions for you to push yourself and dig deeper. And it's almost, you get caught up in the inertia. And it's like, I feel it, right? If I get into that class, or if I get into a competitive, I'm immediately pulled into like that old warrior mindset. And sometimes if I do that, I end up paying the price either in the workout or the next day, because it was just like my body wasn't ready for it. So, it's kind of like the beauty of it is, for some people, that's what they need. They need that little bit extra to tap into that environment. And that's what makes it like so sticky, and like they can do it consistently. You're doing these workouts and they're hard. You feel so good afterwards, endorphins flowing, you're in community doing it. There's so many beautiful aspects of it. And it's just mindful program, and then really communicating to your clients or your members that self-awareness, and that being honest with yourself when you walk in, like, what do you have for that day? How is your sleep? How's your nutrition? What's been going on at work? What's been going on with your relationships? And let's not like pour gasoline on a fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Little shift away from the CrossFit conversation and back to the silliness aspects that you bring. What are some of the things, like in group trainings, things like that? What are some of the exercises and some of the things that you bring to bring that playfulness and that silliness and that energy to the people around you?
Yeah. I would say, as when I do men's retreats, so I've now been a facilitator at, I guess, 4 men's retreats. And I bring 2 things normally to that container. One is, well, a lot of things, but 2 things that I actually teach. One is just showing up as myself and just letting whatever come through. And that's usually a huge intention. But like, one thing is story work, which could have a lot of heaviness to it. And the other is improv, right? Mm-hmm. Which for me, my intention when I'm teaching that is to allow people to connect to their inner child, to play for play's sake. There's no goal or objective. It's just to just have as much fun as possible, and notice in those moments when that inner voice or inner critic is coming up and saying, don't do this, or don't go in the circle, or, hold back, or whatever it may be telling you, like, that was stupid. And just being to kind of give those cues of like, notice in these exercises as we're doing them, what's coming up for you. So you can, have a little bit better awareness around how your inner critic is preventing you from playing and enjoying yourself. Mm-hmm. And in those settings, it's so fun just to see how you would notice somebody show up outside of that environment. And when they're given full permission and they're in that setting, you're just like, dude, this guy's so funny. Or he's so silly. I would never have known he had this silly side to him. Yeah. And it's really beautiful to see that. And a lot of times guys will come up to me afterwards like, dude, I haven't done anything like that since I was a kid. That was so much fun. Like, just takes him back to playing make-believe and all that stuff. So that's a way I like to guide and coach at retreats. And then I would say I don't really coach within classes anymore. Mostly train one-on-one. And in those settings, I feel like the silliness or the goofiness kind of comes through, and just, I don't know, just kind of chopping it up in between. And it's just kind of like, for me, feeling into the mood and what that person's energy is that day. If they're sagging a little bit, or you could tell like a lot is on their mind, like we might lighten it up a little bit. But if they're like eager to train and eager to get after it, we might kind of gear it in that realm. So it's like kind of feeling into what's going on for them.
Meeting the person where they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Going back to the improv thing, like, what led you to bringing that into like men's retreats and things like that? Was it something you experienced elsewhere? Or was it you're just like, I got this idea, I'm bringing it in?
So I first got into improv 2015. Mm-hmm. It was just a lot of fun. I did it. I was in New York and did like my first intro improv class, and I was like, this is pretty goofy and silly, but I just had so much fun. Yeah. So I was like, I'll just keep doing it. And I would take like 2 to 3 classes a year. And did that for, basically up until I left Brooklyn, which was like when the pandemic happened. So, for 5 years, just like doing at least 2 to 3 improv and classes. It like will run for like 10 to 12 weeks. So you're doing like 1 to 2, 1 class per week. And then you do like a show at the end of each one. So for me, bringing that into that container was just part selfish, because I hadn't done improv in so long. And like, at that point, I had moved and hadn't really found an improv spot. And it's much more challenging to find, in the city, you're on a subway 30 minutes, basically in any direction, you could probably get to an improv place. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I moved to LA or I moved to the Bay, it was just like a lot more travel involved. And so it takes a lot more sacrifice in order to get it into your schedule. Mm-hmm. So almost like from a selfish point, like I want to do more improv and I'm like really into this. And it almost, as I viewed it and as I felt into it, as a way to, at the end of this experience, right? Because a lot of times in these containers, like things can get super heavy. Yeah. Things can feel, it's deep. It opens a lot. It cracks you open. A lot of emotions, sadness, anger, frustration come through. And by the end of that, you're just a little bit wiped. Mm-hmm. And to give access to, yes, like feeling into your sadness, feeling into your, being able to move through those emotions can be very healing. And also laughter can be very healing. So to give people access to kind of all of these tools and experiences, and then permission to connect to their inner child, which is for me so important in any type of like healing work or healing modalities or whatever it may be. So just like a way to, at the end of this, kind of like bring your energy back up a little bit, begin to like kind of refuel and like get revitalized in a way. So that was kind of my initial like itch or intuition. And then as I've guided it for the past 3-4 times, like that's pretty much been the experience. It was like pretty much on the nose. So it's been dope to kind of see that come to fruition.
Hell yeah. Have you experienced then retreats where that's not been a component, where it's been just the heavy hitting deep work stuff and like, all right, send you on your way? Or has there always, like, all the retreats that you've experienced, not necessarily even like facilitated with, like, has there been that lightness component that you've had? Like, just asking about, have you experienced the contrast between the two?
I would say there have been retreats that I've gone to where it wasn't such a structured thing. Like this is on the schedule, but like the laughter and things like that. I think just like as a natural part of that, for me, going back to what I was saying before, it just kind of comes through. I might spark it and then somebody feeds off of it. And, in between the thing, we're laughing and crying and laughing and crying. Right.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it just happens and unfolds naturally. But to have a little bit more intentionality where we're setting up a container and this is our intention. Yeah. So I would say when that wasn't the case, how was I feeling? Yeah. I would say walking out of those containers, maybe a little bit more raw, a little bit more just like, whew,
that was a marathon.
Yeah, that was exactly.
Yeah,
totally. And then walking out of these containers, just feeling just like lit up, just feeling like, like way more like my gas tank got refueled at the end. And now I'm ready to get back into, ready to integrate, ready to whatever I'm committed to, whatever I experience, like let that kind of take me into those first few days after a retreat or after an experience, because those first few days are so critical, right?
Yeah.
There's so much newness that's been created, different pathways carved. And those seeds, you have to be very intentional with those seeds. You have to it's just like growing anything, right? In the beginning, the most important is giving that love and attention to what you're growing, right? Because they need it. And then over time, it kind of, that momentum builds. And, I have a little, what do you call it? It's not a garden, but it's like a thing that you hang over the sill and you put little herbs in it. And right now the parsley are just going bananas, right? But in the beginning, the parsley, you had to plant it, and water it each day. And now that stuff's like weeds.
Yeah.
So, and that could be the same for, habits, patterns that you're looking to shift. In the beginning, be very intentional, loving to those things, committed to those things. But then over time, you kind of switch off of that willpower and as much intentionality, and it just kind of takes on an energy of its own and a momentum of its own. You don't have to be as quite on point with it.
Yeah. I just, as you were talking about the gardening and the seed planting, I had just seen, and I don't even remember who it was, where it was, so I can't even give the right credit to where I saw this, but it was really, it stood out to me. And the person said, as we go through the things that we do, we can view that very much as planting seeds, and then know what you are planting. If we plant a pumpkin seed, a pumpkin grows. If we plant an acorn, an oak tree grows. It's very difficult to plant a pumpkin seed and expect an oak tree to grow.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the words that we use, the way that we talk to ourselves, that's the watering and the sunshine and the environment to foster the growth of the pumpkin or the oak tree. If you've planted either one of these seeds, and you're using words that are more like poison, or like you're dumping acid on this on the soil and the seed and expecting it to grow, what do you think's what's going to happen? And that's where a lot of us get stuck in these these thought loops, that inner critic that you talked about in the play, is we've got that seed of creativity within us, and we've been watering it with acid for our entire adult lives. Yeah. And not allowed that to actually burst open and grow.
Yeah. It would be as if you grew something and you walked out and you're like, bitch, you need to grow faster.
Yeah.
It's like so ridiculous.
These damn plants.
Yeah.
Got to get off their asses.
Yeah. What a lazy piece of shit. It's just like, look at that other plant across the other yard. You see that other plant? Yeah. What are you doing?
It's like,
do better.
Oak tree. Look at these green beans. Like I gotta cut them back. Let's get with the program here. No, that's awesome.
It's true though. Like that's how I talk to myself, especially in CrossFit, right? It's like shit talking myself as a way to do better, right? Comparing myself as a way to get better. Prove them wrong as a way to get better.
Yeah.
And that fuel, it's just, like I've said this with Gunnar, interesting enough, it just like leaves like a toxic energetic residue. It's just over time that stuff begins to that darkness begins to like clump up, that sludge, and now it just patience, time, and shifting the way that you talk to yourself, that sludge begins to get clearer and clearer. And it takes time, patience, awareness, shifting how you view yourself. And we both experienced a bunch of tools in order to do that. And it's still a day by day, those old patterns creep up, those old ways of thinking creep up. So yes, I don't have to be as aware, not as aware, but I don't have to be as on it as when I first started. However, it's still like being able to catch yourself and be like, okay, noted, saw that. And yeah, even sometimes in certain situations, you'd be like, okay, I was solid 90% of the time, but in this situation, be it like a conversation with my partner or talking to my client about changing of rates, right? Like those moments, you're like, woof, like meeting my edge and seeing that stuff come back up, right? It's like, that's why like life presents you with those opportunities to really see if you've embodied it, see if you've held it together. And when I've gained that perspective, it's helped shift that, why is this happening to me rather than happening for me?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been definitely moments of where identify those whole patterns. I always feel like it's like walking into something, like, or hitting your head on something. You're like, wasn't expect to see that there, and then all of a sudden there it is, staring me in the face, confronted with it right there. I did have a question about, and this is a general, just a curiosity thing that I've been pondering for a while, is when we're talking about these mindsets of finding a healthy balance for yourself. And like, especially for us as men, like it's very easy to look out into the world for thought leaders, mentors, just examples for us. Why do you think the like ultra macho, the David Goggins of the world, the Jocko Willnicks, the like just shut up and work harder, nobody cares, work harder, Cam Hanes types of things, why do you think that those are so salient for men in the world, that people gravitate to that so almost easily?
I'd say for a lot of men, that more masculine approach, that resonates. That's an easier energy to feel into. Sometimes, even though it may look on paper like the easy thing to do is just sit and meditate for 15 minutes. Like that's easy. For me, that's actually incredibly challenging. Like if you were to give me the option, like, hey, Tyler, go out and run a 10K or go sit for an hour, like in silence, I would pick the 10K all day. So, first thing comes up, like why that message resonates is I also believe that a lot of guys know that for me, what comes up with that is a lot of things that we do is to distract ourselves from discomfort, right? We've like our culture, a lot of things are set up to make things easy, comfortable. So I think there's this need to prove ourselves, this need to test our struggles, similar to what we were saying kind of from the book Wild at Heart, just like kind of like these acts to kind of test our mettle. So I think it kind of taps into this unconscious need of pushing ourselves. And so I think that's one component of it, where a lot of men today have it very easy. And when you can present to them the merit of discipline, pushing yourself, it's very compelling. It's very inspiring. You're like, okay, I can push myself. I can do this. I can make myself proud, which is a very masculine energy, right? So I think that's one, it's addressing a need, and two, it's that kind of masculine approach resonates very strongly. On the flip side of that, right, a little bit more challenging is to keep your life in harmony. Another component of that acceptance, right, that self-acceptance component. But if you look at yourself in the mirror and you know that you're playing video games, addicted to porn, just checking out of your 9 to 5, just in, out, like zoomed out, like it's going to be challenging for you to have self-acceptance when those patterns are there. So it's almost like the masculine comes in, creates structure, creates the capacity for you to begin to create a different narrative. And then that more feminine self-acceptance, slowing down can kind of come in and proliferate. But it's being able to keep things in harmony and self-aware of kind of what you need, right? For me, at the end of CrossFit, I didn't need as much masculine guidance, right? Because I created that self-discipline. I know how to show up to the gym and push myself. That isn't the issue. The issue was why was I doing that? Where was that coming from? And it was coming from a place of insecurity, which is why I needed more of that feminine to come in and build that self-acceptance, that self-worth, unconditional self-love, right? Because sometimes the toxic part of that kind of message, and where it comes from. And then don't get me wrong, I love Goggins, I love Cameron Haynes, I love The Rock, I do resonate strongly with that message and understand the purpose that it serves. With that being said, sometimes depending on the person, that's just not what they need, right?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, once again, kind of pouring gasoline onto the fire.
Or they think it's what they need.
Right.
It's that perceived need versus actual need.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just aren't even aware that they need that more kind of acceptance piece, because to them it's like, it's more feminine. It makes them less of a man. It makes them vulnerable. So there's a lot of that stuff, right? Things that we got probably bullied for as kids, like being a pussy, being, I don't want to say the word, but the F word, right? The F slur, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of men today kind of carry that underneath. And when those messages are brought to us, those kind of like old ways of thinking kind of creep in and just like shut down that message.
Yeah. Very cool. In talking about, since we're on Weird and Strong, like talking about your strengths, like from an outsider perspective, your ability to digest and bring in and like actually embody that balance of the work of healing yourself, definitely comes through as a strength for me that I see and I appreciate in you. What are the areas that you feel particularly strong, or what are the strengths that you bring into the world that you feel really, really called to share?
One is a curiosity. Another one is giving people the benefit of the doubt, right? I'm constantly looking for the best in people. It's just in my nature. Um, Another strength is curiosity, looking for the best. Man, a strength of mine too is understanding that a discipline is another strength. I feel solid in discipline, and especially as it comes to just training and exercise and all that. I feel solid in that, and yeah, and I think that that's helpful in my messaging, right? When a man can look at me and see how I show up, and then they also see my more feminine approach, that those old voices of like pussy, whatever, it begins to shift, and they're like saying like, "Yo, this guy who looks like a savage is talking about heart and love and acceptance." And it begins to like start peeling back and gives them permission to be able to do the same and become like a more harmonious individual, a person who can, carry the ability to, yes, be the provider, the protector, be all that masculine, but also be able that loving, compassionate person. So I feel like that's another strength of mine in the way that I show up in giving men or just anybody who may be more imbalanced in their masculine, that ability to kind of take on and create a little bit better harmony in their life. Yeah.
Solid, man. That's it's one of the things we need more in this world. So I appreciate you bringing that forward.
Yeah.
As we close out, are there things that you'd like to share with the audience? Anything that you've got going on that you'd like to put out and get in front of our audience?
Well, first, just super grateful for the opportunity. Thank you. I've really dug this conversation. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Felt super in flow. So that's always great.
Yeah.
So offerings that I got going on right now. In June, I'm doing a retreat. It's called the Men of Movement retreat. We do it in Mount Shasta. This is going to be the fourth one that we've done. And it's some of the most powerful, life-changing, life-shifting work that I've been a part of. And every time I drop into that container, I'm blown away in the people who show up. I'm blown away how I show up.
Yeah.
It's really, it's beautiful. So definitely check that out. You can hop on my Instagram, Tyler Floch. I'll have something I'm cooking up. It's still very much in like the beginning stages and getting the ingredients together. But going to be dropping something within the next couple months. And I'm also becoming a father.
Yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate it. So there's also that, which is kind of the one little wrench in the works. But yeah, if you just follow me on Instagram, what I like to post on there is just between workouts, advice, personal development, and Fit Style Fridays. If you haven't experienced the Fit Style Friday before, hop on there and see what it's all about.
Yeah, you were on about cold showers last week. I dug that. It was funny because it came right on the heels of we'd just recorded a Nice House Fit podcast about hot and cold. So it all came together all at the same time, which I was like, oh man, we're on like the same wavelength with this. This is awesome.
Hell yeah.
Anyways, any final thoughts before we close it off?
Weird and strong. Man, weird and strong. Trying to think. Yeah, I would say I love the message to embrace your weirdness. We're all weirdos.
Oh yeah.
And we're all weird. We're all insecure. Bring that self-compassion. The more you allow yourself to be yourself, it has a ripple effect on the people you love most. So if you struggle doing it for yourself, know that when you do it for yourself, it's going to impact others. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Perfect mic drop. Thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you for bringing on it. It's been a pleasure and an honor. And until next time, we'll see you on the other side of the podcast. So thank you.
Thank you.